Hello everybody and welcome to another React tutorial for beginners. In today's video, I'm going to be covering forms and events. Now specifically, what we'll be doing here is actually taking all of the knowledge, all the stuff we've learned so far, and applying this into creating some real components, some components that we'll actually keep throughout the rest of this tutorial series, and that will help us start to build our inventory management system. So what we're going to be doing here is building the inventory management system. I described this briefly at the beginning of the series. The idea for this is that we're going to have kind of one component that allows us to add items into the inventory, another component that allows us to search for items in the inventory, and then some type of display for all of the items. And we'll get into styling and making this look better in later videos. For now, I'm just focused on the functionality and, getting some stuff on the screen and showing you guys how this stuff works. So right now, let's actually go ahead and delete almost everything that we've done so far. So I'm going to get rid of info, going to get rid of button state and data here. Going to go to info and just delete this entire file. We don't want this anymore. And I think that I mentioned this previously, but I'm going to delete this setup test file. I don't know why that's back in this app test.js. All right, so let's delete that. And now all we have is this app file. All right, so actually let's go ahead and create a file here. I'm going to make a new file and call this searchbar.js. And then I'm just going to go to app.js and remove these three things here because obviously we don't need these anymore. Okay, so let's remove those. Go back to search bar, and now let's create a component. So first I'll actually import some stuff from React. So I'll say import, and then we'll import use state from, and then React. And then we'll define our function search bar, and we can take, I guess we could take some props. We'll take some props there. And then here we'll go ahead and start rendering the search bar. So return, and then let's create what we want. So for the search bar, what I want to have is a few different fields. I want one field to look for, say, maybe the name of a product, maybe one for the maximum price of a product. And there's a few other things we could do as well. I'm just trying to think what we want to store for like our items in inventory. This is again going to be kind of just like a simple example. So maybe we'll have something where each item has maybe a name, a price. No, why is this not giving it to me properly? Okay, so name, price. We can go with maybe type of item. And finally, maybe we could do maybe brand of item or something like that. So we'll say that these are the 4 fields that we want. And so we'll make kind of 4 corresponding fields here in the search bar so you can search for items based on any of these 4 fields. So let's start by creating a form here. We'll say form like that. Above this form, we can make a header. So we'll say h2, and then we'll say search for an item. And we'll style this form in one of the later videos. Okay, so for the form, we don't really need anything inside of there. What we can do is we can make an input tag. So we can say input like that. We can then do a label above this input. So we'll say label / label. This label will be for. And then we need a class name here. So we'll say, actually not class name, we need an ID. We'll say ID is equal to, and then the first thing we'll have is name field like that. Yeah, okay, that works. And then this can be for name hyphen field. All right, so the label here, we'll just put it as name, and then the input, this will be type equals text, and I think that's probably all we need for the input tag, and I think we can actually just end the input tag like that. Okay, so let's copy this a few times. So we will have name, we will then have price, so we'll say max price, and I think for type for this, we can make this a number. I think that's a valid type at least. And then instead name field, we'll just make this price field like that. And we could do a min price too, but for now we'll just do a max price. We can add stuff later on. Now we'll copy this. And what else do we want? We want the type. So let's go with type here. And then instead of price field, we can do type field and type field. This will then be a text. And one more is going to be the brand. So we'll say brand like that, and then brand field, and again, instead of number, we are going to have text. All right, and then we want a button. This button will be search, so we'll say button, and then this can be search like that. And it's not actually necessary to put this inside of a form, but we're just going to do that because it's kind of good practice. Okay, so for some reason this isn't auto formatting. I wonder if I made a mistake here. Oh, it's because I have this up here. Let's remove that, and there you go. Now we get our auto formatting. Okay, so let's actually use this now. Let's render this component. So we're going to go to app.js. We're going to say import, and we need to make sure we export this. So we're going to say export default, and then search bar like that. All right, then we will come here and we will import search bar from, and then dot slash search bar like that. Okay, now we can render this. So let's go with search bar and then end the tag. Okay, so now we can see we have our name, our max price, our type, and our brand. Now, obviously, it doesn't look too nice right now, but that's fine. We'll just leave it like this for now. And when you press search, you can see it actually does something for the form. I think I can turn that off because I don't want it to actually refresh the page when we press search. So let's actually figure out how we can make it so that when we press the button, the form is not active. Okay, so I think the way to fix this is to actually just make this type equals button rather than type equals submit. And now if I refresh this and I press search, notice that it's not actually refreshing the page. Okay, so there we go. We now have our button. I think by default, this is equal to a submit button. And so when you make it just a regular button, I will not submit the form. Awesome. That's kind of what we're looking for. Now that we have done that, what we want to do is actually have some state for all of these fields. Ideally, what I want to happen is when I press the search button, we're able to get access to whatever is inside of all of these fields. And for now, we'll just print it to the screen, but we actually want to return that probably to app.js, where then we could render some different data depending on what we searched for. So we're going to use state here, and we're going to define 4 pieces of state, one for the name, one for the max price, one for the type, and one for the brand. So we're going to say const like that, and then we're going to say name, and then set name is equal to use state. This will just be an empty string by default. And then we'll copy this a few times and we'll change this appropriately. So rather than name, we want this to be price. So then this is going to be set price, and the default here, we can make this actually just 0 for now. And then instead of name, we are going to have the type, and we'll say set type. This can be an empty string. And then lastly, we'll have the brand, and this could be set brand. And again, that can be an empty string. All right, so now what we want to do is make it so that whatever the value of this state is actually what's being used for these inputs. And so what I'm going to do is for all of these inputs, say value is equal to, and then the corresponding state variable. In this case, we'll go with name. Now here for this, we're going to say value is equal to, and this will be the price. And then same thing here for the type, value is equal to type. And finally, value is equal to brand. Okay, so now we're going to save that. I'm going to refresh. And notice though, when I go here and I start trying to type, nothing is happening. Now, the reason nothing is happening when I type here is because we have explicitly set the value of these fields to be equal to our state. And our state is kind of constant right now. It's not changing. We have nothing that's updating our state. And so when I try to type something here, well, nothing's going to happen. And whenever you set the value equal to something explicitly on one of these fields, well, to be able to change this value, you actually need to implement an event handler. And this is where we get into events. So whenever we start updating this input field, there's actually an event that will be triggered called onChange. So if you say onChange, you can make this equal to a function. And we're actually going to do an arrow function here. And what this arrow function will take as a parameter is e. Now, E is kind of the event that occurred that caused this onChange thing to be triggered, and E will allow us to actually access what the user typed into this input field. And so what we're going to do here is have an arrow function, and we're going to say set, and then in this case, name, and this is going to be e.target.value. So we will continue in 1 second, but I need to quickly thank the sponsor of this video and this series, which is Algo Expert. Algo Expert is the best platform to use when preparing for your software engineering coding interviews. They have over 155 coding interview questions. All of those questions have detailed solutions in 9 of the most popular programming languages, as well as a video explanation by a great instructor. Get started with Algo Expert today by clicking the link in the description and using the code TechWithTim for a discount on the platform. So this is kind of just what you do when you want to actually update the input field that is using state to kind of control its value. You put an onChange, and then you take a parameter e. E will automatically be passed to this from the onChange event handler. And then we will call setName, and we will update our name state to be equal to whatever the user typed in, which we're getting from e.target.value. So you don't have to fully understand what this is, but when you say e.target, that's getting the actual component here, which is input. And then we're grabbing the value, and then we are updating our name with that. And so when we update our name, the field will actually change, right? So when I go hello, we can see it actually changes. Whereas here, if I go over to type and I try to type something, well, nothing happens. So now we're just going to copy this exact same thing for all of the different functions. So let's go onChange, or sorry, not functions, but different input tags. And rather than set name here, this is going to be set price. And then we'll do the same thing here for the type. Just change this to set type. And then lastly here, do the same thing for brand. We'll say set and then brand. Okay, when I save that, you can see this updates. Now, if I refresh here and I go and I change these, you can see that all of these are working the same because now we have the event handler. Now, let's see if we're getting any errors. I just want to look in the console quickly. Warning invalid DOM property 4. Did you mean HTML4? See, I wonder why this is incorrect because usually I've used 4 and it's worked. Let's just see if I change this to be HTML4, if this is going to do anything for us. Okay, it doesn't look like it actually makes a difference at all, to be honest, but let's change it for all of them and just see if this error goes away. One of you guys can maybe correct me in the comments here if I'm mistaking something, but usually I've used 4 and it's worked before. So HTML4 and then HTML4. Okay, so let's go to inspect. And okay, we're not getting an error now, so I'm going to assume that what I just did is correct, so we'll leave that. Nice. Okay, anyways, now we've done that, and we have the state, and the state should be holding everything that we're typing in these fields. So now if we actually want to see what was typed into these fields when we press the search button, we need some kind of event handler for this. And so what I'm going to do is create a function here, and I'm just going to say const and then search button pressed, and this is going to be equal to an arrow function. And all we'll do here is we'll just console.log all of the stuff. So we'll console.log the name, we'll console.log on a new line the price, we'll console.log the type, and then finally the brand. Okay, so let's save that. And now let's set this function on the button. So let's go here and press, or say onClick is equal to, and then what did I call this? Search button pressed. Okay, so now we've done that. Let's open up our console here and let's type something in. So name, Tim, price, let's just go 23, brand, whatever. We can make this, I don't know, test, and then, or sorry, type test and brand can be test2. And when we press search, notice all of them are printing out. If I change this to be test3 and I press search, now test3, we're getting that update occurring there. Awesome. So there you go. That all works. And now we have implemented the state. We have created a form and we're able to actually access all of the values in this form from the state of our component. So now what I want to do though, is I want to actually display the stuff that we were searching for either in this component and maybe a child component, or I want to pass what we were searching for to whatever rendered this search bar. So how do we go about doing that? Well, this is where it gets a little bit more difficult, but I am going to actually make it so that we are showing something here, maybe below the form, that displays all of the stuff that we search for. So let's actually just say in a paragraph tag here, let's go with name, name. Let's go with, this is going to be max price and then max price. Oops, this is just called price. Okay, so let's make that price if I could type that properly. Let's do another p tag, and what do we want to make this one? This is going to be type. And then lastly, we have our brand. So let's go ahead and do that. Brand, and now brand. Okay, so I'm going to save. I'm going to refresh here, and you can see that we have name, max price, type, and brand. So let's just go Tim. Let's press search, and notice it updates right here. So there you go. We have now created our search bar. Okay, so now that this is displaying here, I'm going to show you how we can actually send this information, so all of these things right here, back to this app component, and we're going to do this through a prop. So remember how I told you that we cannot modify props. They're read-only values. Because what might be a clever thing to do here is to maybe make a variable up here, make a state up here or something, right? So we'd say const, we'd say data, and set data, and then this would be equal to use state. And then maybe we would try to pass this data, maybe this is a JavaScript object or something, to search bar. So we say data equals data. And then in search bar, we're like, okay, well, this is easy. We can just update data and then it will change here and we'll have access to the data. But we can't do that. So instead, what we need to do is we need to pass a function to search bar that we're going to call our callback. And we can call this something else. We will in a second, but for the formal kind of term of what we're doing here is a callback. And this function will update the state in this component, and it will be called from the child component. So just bear with me here while I do this. I'm going to say const, and this will be update data is equal to a function. And what we'll do here is we will take a value. So we'll take some data, and we'll say data is equal to data like that. And actually, let's just call this search params, because that makes a bit more sense. Search params standing for search parameters. And let's make this search params. Okay, so now, actually, sorry, we want to change the state. So we're going to say set data like that, and then search params. And then I realized that we want to import use state. So let's go ahead and do that and say import use, or import use state from, and then this is going to be React. All right, so apologize for all the typing, but now we can stop for a second and explain what we're going to do. So we're going to take this function here, update data, and we're going to pass this as a callback parameter to the search bar. So now in search bar, we can access from the props this parameter here called callback. And what we can do is call that function. And what this function will do is then update the data, right? So we'll actually call set data. So we will change the state in this component. And that means that we didn't have to change any of the props here. We just call the function that then changed the state on the component that rendered us. So this is kind of the way that you can, in a child component, update the parent component. I get it's a little bit confusing, but that is kind of how that works. So let's go ahead and do this. So when the search button is pressed, what I actually want to do is say props.callback, and I want to pass to this the data. So for now, I'm just going to pass data, and we'll just say, test, but we'll actually put these fields in there in 1 second. And now what will happen is we will call the callback function, we'll pass this JavaScript object, and then here we will update our data to be equal to that JavaScript object that was passed. So if we want to look at this JavaScript object, what we can do here is go p, and then we can just say, what should we do here? Data. Although the thing is, since data is a JavaScript object, this isn't really going to work very well. So we want to say data and then at data, but only if data is in data. So a little bit confusing. We're going to say data in data question mark. If that's the case, then we'll say data. Otherwise, we'll say no data to display, and this needs to be in quotation marks. Okay, hopefully that kind of makes sense, but let's see here. It's saying no data to display, but then as soon as we actually press this here, notice that it changes to test, right? So it actually updates because we called that callback, which then changed the state. So now let's finish this up by just removing all of these because we don't need these anymore. And now let's make it so that we actually pass, rather than just data, all of the different values here. So the name, the price, the type, and the brand. So let's do that. We're going to pass name : name. We're going to pass price : price. We're going to pass type : type. And we're going to pass brand : brand. We're going to save that. And then this should be all good. Okay, so let's try this out. Okay, so now what I'm actually going to do instead is, it's a little bit of work, but let's just write it out because we need to do this. Rather than checking if data is in data, I'm going to check first off if name is in data. If name is in data, then I will display the name, and we'll just put kind of name : like that. And then we'll copy this, and we'll just do the same for all of the other keys that we're expecting in this data. So rather than name, next we're going to have max price. And then rather than checking name, we're going to check price, and then we'll display price. And then the next one we had, I believe, was type. So rather than checking name, we're going to check type. So let's go with type. And then lastly, we had brand. So let's do that. Brand, and finally brand. Okay, so now you can see it says no data to display for all of these because, well, we don't have any data here. We start with an empty object. But now if I go here and I go, all right, we're looking for, I don't know, maybe fruit. Our max price is going to be $10. The type is, let's just say NA. And the brand is maybe going to be organic. I know this doesn't really make any sense, but let's just search and notice that now this updates. So we have price, we have name, price, type, and brand. And if we change this, we make this empty, and now we press search, notice this goes away. Now, the reason why it's not showing us no data to display is because we do actually have a key called brand. However, what's being stored in brand is just an empty string because here we have an empty string for the state for brand. So hopefully that kind of makes sense, but I just wanted to show you here how we can actually pass data kind of up our React components. So what we do is we pass a callback function so we can actually modify the state of a parent component from a child component. And you kind of saw how that worked. We passed the data as a parameter to this callback function, and then this callback function used that data to update the state in this component, and that caused this component to re-render and then display everything that is here. All right, so that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully this kind of cleared up how the state works, how you can pass it between different components. In the next video, I think what we'll do is actually build that add item component, and we'll show how we can display all of the different kind of inventory items based on these search results. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next React tutorial.